In the beginning of this chapter was John. He answers the Pharisee as they question him as to who he is. And answers them, I am the Christian. That's so. Jesus really is. For Jesus, the good shepherd, knows his sheep, and he knows all the details of our lives. You and I have nothing to try from
Permpeh permitted one of his sons, John, to be ordained as an Anglican priest in the bigger island of Mauritius. It was a pacifist act to the British and commitment of faith. Paul Martin, born during the exile with his brother, Thomas, later explained that, I do not think the elders sat down and rationalized whether they would convert or not. They found themselves in an alien context. Here in Seychelles, the people drew comfort and strength from God, whom they worshipped in a different way. It was the same God as far as the elders were concerned. It was later that they had to decide on a Christian denomination. But much has not changed in Asante's belief that God should be worshipped in a cultural context. The Asante royalty is mainly Anglican, thanks to Permpeh's baptism. But the ivory trumpet poets and verbal artists still use their media to glorify God in the most cultural form of hybridism and through the sacrament of the Eucharist. The Asantehene is today the titular head of the church in Asante, the Metropolitan Archbishop of the province of West Africa, and the primate is the Bishop of the Kumasi Diocese and a subject of the King. The Most Reverend Dr. Daniel Yinkasafu, as well as descendants of Permpeh who have been chancellors and peoples and priests wardens over the decades. The impact is geo-neutral, and the singing of Handel's Zabba the Priest or God Save the Queen could be with the same flourish whether the Archbishop of Canterbury is officiating at the Westminster Abbey or St. Cyprian the Martyr in Kumasi. A century and 2 decades of a young king's exile is remembered with deep meaning. Hawkish historians tend to treat Permpeh's reign with peripheral analysis and overlook his reason and power at the time. When resistance to an arch-imperial intentional destruction did not always lead to resolution at the crossroad of history. They turn to forget also that throughout the period, he was the testament of cultural faith and its defense through history writing and the energy of letters. The personally taught history of his people to the new generation born on the island and celebration of Asante festivals. That he also became a sorrowful figure of cultural bereavement, having to bury his parents and other elderly chiefs in a foreign land without due honors as leader of the exile group. He has written in one of his letters that of the 54 people I came with, there remain only 6 chiefs, and out of the 6, 1 is blind. The remaining are old and ill. This has created more loneliness as compared to when we were so crowded. These letters of melancholy created nationalistic protests from the intelligentsia in the Gold Coast, including from Nana Oforiatta I, E.J.P. Brown, Dr. B.N. Porte, Permpeh, the lawyer J. Casey Hayfield, who said Permpeh should be allowed to die in his own land. Yet he still had the sanity of preservation, even at a point when he had reached the limits of his powers. If he had not been strong at the time, Asante would have been weaker today. He would not also have been able to sponsor as progenitor the transition of Asante into the 20th century modernity. Today's relationship with former adversaries is friendship, diplomacy, and cultural cooperation.
And we didn't have time to travel outside the car.
It could even be a drawback to imperial uncle. Queen Victoria would have been happy with this. But the leaders of old also believed in fate and the destination of its course, whether through layers in a deep forest, across streams or oceans. The path crosses the stream, they said. The stream crosses the path, which is the elder, they once asked as a puzzle of sometimes life's dilemma. For they knew, if only for rhetoric, that the path was of long ago. The living also says in Asante of the death forebears, Yedru Awukudae Neakai Yam, that the ancient of places remind us of the gallantry of the nation's builders. And so it is that a nephew remembers a great uncle.
And hardly do the stars ever align to tell a beautiful story as ours, one of resilience, courage, and an indomitable will to persist. 25 years upon his ascension to the throne, in the 150th year after the Sacramenti War, and 100 years upon the return of our King. Please help me appreciate our King, Otumfuo, Osei II, Asantehene, King of Asante, home and abroad. Thank you. And now, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, having prepared in mind and in heart, let us receive the man who built the bridge from Asante to Seychelles. Director at the Menchia Palace Museum and Associate Director at the Wole Soyinka Foundation, I give to you a son of Asante man, Professor Ivan Ajiman Duya.
The eminent limbits of Asante Court, Bafo Osei, recounted in a 1998 conversation how Asante man received Nama Admiral Permpeh I and his returning exile party at the Kumasi railway station. Bafo was a teenager at the time, and his father had preempted a scenario of a reception and an unfolding sense of history that will be remembered. It was more than that though, indeed an epiphany in reconciliation. And that was how father and son ended up with a male crowd on November 12, 1924. The youth of Bafo time knew of the tragic circumstances of Permpeh's exile. The 27-year alienation that Nelson Mandela would eventually share with him in African history. In 1897, Permpeh was aware of the imminent danger, or worse, end of his reign. The deportation orders that had been made by the British military were followed by the marching orders from Kumasi to Elmina. Yet, about 500 anti-colonial Ashanti activists and courtiers decided to travel with him up to Elmina before his final voyage to the Indian Ocean. If the tragic hero and bearer of history was at last returning, the right courtesies were to be given. The voyage from Seychelles was 2 months long, from the harbor city of Bombay, or what is now modern-day Mumbai, in India, through the port of Sudan, which is between Eastern and Central Africa, up north to Port Said in Egypt, still within the Red Sea, or the Eastern Arab world. It was from there that they sailed to Europe, first to Liverpool in England, and further across into the ancient port city of Marseille in southern France, and onwards to the British peninsula of Gibraltar on the south coast of Spain. They started the journey on the SS Olympia and finally made it to the Gold Coast on the SS Abyssinia. Many of the welcome party or crowd slept at the Kumasi station on the eve of return till the expected arrival of the main train from Sekendi at 6 a.m. the following day, that is November 12. Eventually, and one after the other, the 45 royal passengers, in a palpable state of anxiety, disembarked. The focus, as expected, was on Permpeh. Majority of the crowd had never met him, neither had they ever seen an image of him, which also explained why they were there in their numbers. They saw a middle-aged man in a distinguishing suit with an English hat, which went against the expectation of a cloth-wearing nobler. It was when some of the elders started screaming and singing his affiliation that the jubilation started. A number of the young royals' returnees were carried on the necks of joyous others all the way to Asafo. Among them was the 10-year-old Mary Permpeh, daughter of the returning Asantehene. The jubilation, she told me in 1989, went on till the evening as mothers looked through the crowd for their children who had gone unaccompanied. It would be a cruel expectation that Permpeh's persona will remain the same, having left as a young king at the presumed age of 26 and spending over a quarter of a century in a strange land. He was culturally adaptable to multiracial Seychelles. He took to adult literacy, especially the English language, and the most English of recreations, cricket. He and some of the chiefs were into herbal medicine and trained some Seychelles, including their leading herbalist, Charles Yako, in their medicinal garden. An anthropologist in Mahé, J.P. Mahon, and I are still searching for a manuscript, presumably written by Permpeh, his chief herbalist, the Asantehene or Asantehene, Kwame Boateng, and two chiefs of the Nsumampa, Kwame Afre and Kodo Yeboah. The most important of Permpeh's new multifocal outlook was his interest in Western education and Christianity, which would be the most enduring in Asante society. A couple of weeks after he settled in at Asante, he requested for a meeting with some immediate members of the ruling Oyeko clan. 41 of them attended. It was principally about their welfare and the additions made. Grandmothers and mothers went with the younger ones, and they were all introduced. Permpeh singled out two. The first was Edward Owusu, son of his sister, Bakma, and thus his nephew. Bakma was the first royal to have unexpectedly died in Kumasi during the exile. The other was the son of a peer Echan called Berima Osei. Permpeh made it clear to some elders of Kumasi that the two will succeed him as Asantehene. This came to pass. Edward Owusu as Osei Permpeh II or Osei Tutu, and Berima Osei as Awukudae II. Edward Owusu had an interest in entrepreneurship instead of formal education, and his uncle supported him. As for Berima Osei, days after the historic meeting, Permpeh personally took him to enroll at what is now the Sensipen Primary School at Fantini Town, and left him in the care of the Anglican fathers. At some point, Osei lived with them at the Church of England Mission House. Permpeh ensured the Christian growth of his successors, and it was clear that his interest was not an alibi for his early return from exile. The Harvard University historian Emmanuel Kokwé-Champon once wrote that in need of spiritual explanation, Nana Permpeh was eager to learn about Christianity. Their conversion was powerful, for in converting, Permpeh was expressing allegiance to the Queen of England, as well as submitting to the religious oversight of the Archbishop of Canterbury. For many years, I found this as an extant truth. My conclusion later on was that it was more of his public policy decisions and the effect of his succession plan which eventually manifested, possibly in the Champon's conclusion. Many Ashantis were encouraged to go to Alexandra College, Cape Coast, until Permpeh College was established. It was Permpeh's children and other returnees from the Seychelles who later led the independence from the Diocese of Accra in 1973. The future of Awukudae II, we must remember, was a servant of the sanctuary. He took over church leadership for about 3 decades as chancellors, registrars, wardens, and in a way created a synod structure linked to Menchia. The submission to the Archbishop of Canterbury in Kent became one to the King of Asante in Menchia. However, better relationships developed on bilateral frontiers. In 2023, the recently resigned Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Baldwin, presented to Otumfuo Osei II the highest honor of the Anglican Communion, the Cross of St. Augustine, or the Lambert Award mentioned. It was for his and predecessors' significant contribution to the growth of the Anglican Communion. The last monarch to receive this before him was the late Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. Earlier in 2015, Roland Williams, the 104th Archbishop of Canterbury since Augustine, and one of the world's leading theologians at Magdalen College, the University of Cambridge, was selected Osei Tutu II to be guest speaker on history and archaeology at his college. This was at an event honoring Nelson Mandela. Christian values had a deep influence on the chosen successors. According to his biographer and collaborator, Asantehene, when Permpeh II was asked of the secret behind his success as a king for 39 years, the longest since the establishment of the kingdom, he mentioned his Bible, which he had kept from the day of his installment as Asantehene. The 83-year-old Bible is here at the National Palace Museum. Cerebrates wrote, "This is now reduced to a threadbare of a Bible, apparently through its constant use. His devotion and deep trust in God are sometimes frightening." When Permpeh I died, the 13-year Awukudae II wept bitterly at the church service at St. Cerebrates. He told his biographer, the British historian Ivor Wells, in the 1970s, that he lost a mentor and a carer, and he spoke emotionally, according to Wells, of those who had helped him but who have now departed this life. Aside Permpeh I, they included Father Carlton of London and his mother, Permpeh in Kumasi. Later, Awukudae II would travel to England to pursue law instead of his choice of local government. As you may be aware, one of the district commissioners of Asante, in dispatches to London, wrote that litigation is beloved by Ashantis. Obviously, a royal lawyer would be more exotic in a courtroom situation. And so they went to England with the assistance of Permpeh II, the Kumasi Traditional Council, and the British Council. On his first Sunday in England, he served at the altar of the Church of St. Margaret the Mother, now part of the lower end of the London Bridge, built in the second half of the 1600s. The respected newspaper, Church Times of London, which reported this, described him as a royal server and heir presumptive of the Ashanti Kingdom. By these developments, Permpeh I had completely changed faith policy of the Ashanti monarchy after almost 200 years. His great predecessors, Asantehene's Osei in the 1810s, followed by Awukudae and Mensah, had weathered off Christian influences. They argued that there was nothing wrong with the faith, since it was one God worshipped in different ways. The caveat, however, was that Asante traditions would not be subverted for the star of the apple. This explains why, in 1869, the head of the Basel mission of the Presbyterian Church, Ramsey, was imprisoned in Kumasi for 5 years. It was the same argument that the Uganda Kingdom of Uganda made around 1887. People could convert to Christianity, but not at the expense of traditional values. It was when the Catholic Church did exactly that, using the courtiers in the palace as tools of rebellion, that the Kabaka had all the convicts killed in the famous story of the martyrs of Uganda. The questions worth asking, for which I do not have all the answers, are: why was Permpeh I in such a hurry with his succession plan? Did he know his days on the throne of his ancestors would not be long? Whatever they were, that plan, whether by premonition or strategic thinking, has been the most sustainable of peaceful succession in the last 100 years. Aside this was an economic management plan for the future. Until his death, only 7 years after his return, he did not have access to the wealth of his kingdom, as the prime lands and other ancestral resources and natural resources as well had been registered in the name of the British Crown. The two things he relied on were the pride of the people and the hopeful succession. In the end, they worked. Permpeh I was also the first to set up a modern administrative office of private secretaries, palace planners, state secretaries, and protocol units to complement the changing times. The earliest private secretaries had included the Seychelles-born Watting brothers, in particular Henry and Paul, who developed compulsory education schemes for the royals and other talented individuals, branded the palace, and also opened the channels for international diplomacy and visitations from Africa and other leaders. These included the visit of the UK Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sir Stanford Cripps, to Kumasi. The reign of Ajimai Permpeh II saw fruits of these policies as he added on and created opportunities for greater growth. The leadership shown in the restoration of Asante Confederacy in 1935, as reflected in the papers, and the subsequent negotiation, which in 1941 led to the revestment of the lands in the Golden Stool in the Kumasi Lands Ordinance, will eventually produce some of the revenue that Ajimai Permpeh needed. These monies were invested in educational infrastructure, disassociation with 23 secondary schools, the eventual University of Science and Technology, and other policies which included the sponsorship of individuals to universities abroad. Many of the Asante Seychellois who later joined the public service of Ghana, including public broadcasting, and who had the external French department at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. They were also cricket commentators for the BBC, and one of them, as the Watting brothers, Thomas, co-founded the Alliance Française in Ghana and was its president for many years, and another became ambassador. Yet, others went to the judiciary and became justices, and a sizable number joined in the bar. In fact, Ajimai Permpeh II recovered enough lost grounds, writing the usurpation of school lands by non-royals, a situation the British had intentionally created as fodder for colonial control. By the time he was done with some of the major reinstatements, he had enough credibility such that the Chieftaincy Act 1961, Act 81, that was passed by the Nkrumah government and which created the National House of Chiefs, made him the titular president, and for the headquarters to be in his capital, Kumasi. Permpeh II had also realized the changing times and has supported Shematin and others in setting up the Ashanti Cultural Center, which became the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa, in tangible and intangible preservation. It houses the Permpeh II Museum, whose facilities are still the most elaborate. Nkrumah nationalized it and asked Shematin to replicate it in the other regions of the country. There were the turbulent times of the dilemma of identity in an emergent Ghana from 1954 to 1957, when Asante sought a federal status. Cocoa and its producer price had been the immediate cause and had led to the formation of the National Liberation Movement, which was closely related to Menchia and Predator. It was the first most violent political engagement after the last Anglo-Ashanti War of 1900. It was, however, not in unison, as it was based on partisan political interests. Permpeh II and Asante survived with long-term impact that led to the creation of one of the two major political parties in Ghana. The exile of Permpeh I created such a big dissolution from the 1900s and was of interest to many scholars, the British district commissioners and governors who wrote extensively about it. Virtually all the accounts never gave room for its recovery in a post-colonial situation. The chief commissioner of Asante, Francis Fuller, in the vanished dynasty, came to the conclusion that it was all over in its glory and imperial history. Even within, such pessimism was prevalent. The future of Awukudae II intimated that when he was growing up, the general feeling was that Permpeh I will never return. If there was any hope that he ever gave, it was in his correspondence to the elders of Kumasi. Thankfully, 9 years ago, Otumfuo Tutu II authorized this correspondence to be compiled in a collaborative exercise with the Seychelles National Archives, and they are now at this palace. The last of the documents got in 3 days ago. As Permpeh II was getting physically weaker towards the end of his reign, which eventually came and was announced on May 30th, 1970, Awukudae II was at the peak or prime of his readiness by a prediction of fate. Permpeh II had groomed him and prevented him from going into banking. According to Wells, Permpeh II personally took him to the town and city council. This was after Awukudae had gained somewhat experience in Takrady and Nanzim in building surveys and land management. He became the officer of works and development in Kumasi. The reign of Awukudae II was peaceful and was the beginning of high-flight Asante diplomacy. He befriended other monarchs, which apart from the House of Windsor, included the King of Persia or the Shah of modern-day Iran as a member of the Monarchies League. Of the uproar that greeted J.J. Rawlins's June 4th uprising in 1979 and the 31st December Revolution, he was tactful, and it later paid off as he became the elder of the nation. In a Silver Jubilee conversation that Charles Rekugrobe and I published in 1995, titled The Great Free Year, the wife of Awukudae II emphasized this. He told us, when J.J. Rawlins staged his June 4th uprising, he came to Kumasi within that week. There was curfew, and at 1 a.m., soldiers came to our house here, that is in Seychelles, and said Rawlins was at the officers' mess and wanted to see Otumfuo urgently, and that I should take him to Menchia that early morning. I dressed up, and in the midst of a convoy of armored cars, I went with the soldiers with Rawlins in one of the armored cars to Menchia Palace. It was 1:30 a.m. as in the morning, and we woke up the Asantehene and the other chiefs who sleep in the palace and went to see Otumfuo. Rawlins knelt before Otumfuo and introduced himself, saying he had come to greet him before he would continue with his work. He had decided not to go to sleep that night without seeing him. On Rawlins' second coming, the 31st of December, and the start of the revolution, Awukudae was instrumental behind the scenes in getting some donor and multilateral support. At his funeral eulogy, Rawlins, on behalf of the state of Ghana, said, I hope that one day the people of this country will know what Awukudae did for us. For a declined empire, which had been written off and which Permpeh I had rejuvenated, its influence in national development over a century after exceeded the vanished dynasty. To understand the political leadership of Asante better, and especially from the return of Permpeh I, is to listen to what the nominees say on instrument and not who did what. The oath of kinship, using the Mpomponso sword, is the social contract of a continuum, as were the reigns of Permpeh II and Awukudae II. So is that of whom we have now, Osei Tutu II. In April 1999, he invoked the names of his predecessors and promised to add to what they did, turning the Mpomponso sword towards the cardinal geographies of Kumasi, to the chiefs and people present as eyewitnesses. He swore that I am the grandson of Osei and Oku. I am the grandson of Nana Bonsu. I am the great-grandnephew of Nana Adjumani Permpeh I. Nana Kwame Twitwi Permpeh II was my uncle. Awukudae II was my elder brother. If my elder brother Awukudae is gone to the village, and by the grace of Asantehene, you have given his gun to me to rule. If I don't rule well, if I don't govern the state and protect you as my forefathers did, I violate the great oath. One of the challenges that Permpeh I had was to undo what the British had done with non-loyals occupying certain schools. This was not of immediate concern though, as some got resolved. He rather abolished certain schools whose relevance posed challenges to evolving modernity. One of them had a semblance in functionality of heir presumptive to the golden stool. As long as there was a reigning Asantehene, this should not be. If anything, it should only be an unofficial gossip. And that explains why he abolished the Awukudae stool. As he was around for only 7 years, it fell on Permpeh II to investigate the right lineage politics. Because he had time, he succeeded to a large extent. He also decided that for the first time, school histories should be documented for prosperity. And so, he charged Joseph and Ivor Walls to do that in a 10-year project at the Institute of African Studies at the University of London, which has helped to resolve some of the contemporary cases. If sustainability of the kinship was the forefathers' primary responsibility, Osei Tutu II was also in his oath the Lord's spiritual, whose duty was to protect the sovereign people as his forebears did. He has so far successfully adjudicated over 400 chieftaincy cases with their attendant disputes on the ownership and management of land before 1883. That is, after the Civil War, we did not have this peaceful period. This has successfully been done, such that major tensions before the last quarter century that led to underdevelopment in communities are forgotten. I will give 3 more examples of succession that has made Asante stronger from the 1800s and more particularly years from Permpeh I. When T.E. Bowditch visited Asantehene Osei in Kumasi, they discussed the British Museum. Osei wanted to do something similar. The British Museum wanted to do something similar. The cost involved was, however, prohibitive, as the stones would have to be imported from Europe, as had been done in the building of the Forsten castles along the coast. He settled on building the Aban, which is a stone house and probably the first museum in tropical Africa. He told Bowditch that Asante would in the future build the type of the British Museum after he was gone. Something curious happened in March this year. Together with the curator from the British Museum, we had a view of this hall in which we are seated now and its compartment. We were surprised at its size and intended usage. Later, as we sat at the British Museum's Anthropology Center in London, going through Bowditch's papers, we realized that this hall has about the same size as the original one of the British Museum that Bowditch discussed with Osei. The second example of continuum was about Permpeh II, who wanted to build a museum for Permpeh I in the late 1940s. As it could not be done, and Awukudae knew of it, he turned the palace of Permpeh I into this museum, the other end, which will be 30 years next year. Now, Osei Tutu II, having given this auditorium, has almost completed the first purposefully built contemporary palace museum in this country. He sat through the partnership agreement in London with Tutu Oil Company and was involved with reviews of designs and secured the initial grant with which the museum was started and added on to it. 2 weeks ago, the Reserve Bank of South Africa gave permission for export of some Asante gold objects of the 19th century. This was through his initial contact with the Anglo Gold Ashanti, which had previously purchased these objects from the Swiss. art. This will be part of his new museum and architecture. The third example has to do with the looted objects of 1874 and 1897. Permpeh I, on his return, was livid upon learning that among the looted objects was a particular basin used for veneration at the Royal Museum at Mantua. His disputation with the British Colonial Secretary yielded nothing. While he and others thought the basin was at the British Museum, it has always been lodged at the National Army Museum in South Kensington in London. Permpeh II also requested for the restitution of the looted objects up to the late 1960s. Awukudae II did the same. None of these objects are evacuated. In the sense that the reign of Osei Tutu II brought 7 from the Fowler Museum in February and 32 from the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum in March, it's a classic condition of affirmation when they swear that they will act to what their predecessors did or could not do. The returned objects led to homecoming, adversity, and commemoration on May 1, 2024. This exhibition is the most visibly powerful statement and event since Permpeh's return. It had a global restitution interest of over 40 million people, with the BBC networks alone registering over 10 million. The ifs of history are detestable contemplations. But if Permpeh I had not returned, what would have happened? This memorial year constitutes a trinity of cultural renewal. 1874, 1924, 2024. Memorialized by his nephew, Permpeh II, his grand-nephews, Awukudae II, Osei Tutu II, who is presiding over this festival. It is under his reign that the government of Ghana, through his advocacy, named an international airport after Permpeh I. It is the making of history that Permpeh, before whose return was so desperate, has become a bicentenary patron of the Awukudae dynasty, or in our way, Awukudae PLC. On January 21st, 1918, he wrote that mournful petition. And I cited it. Consider how wretched I am, for I am being taken prisoner together with father, mother, brother, and chiefs for now 22 years. And now, how miserable to see that father, mother, brother, and nearly 3/4 of the chiefs are dead. The remaining quarter, some are blind, some worn out with old age, and the rest being attacked with diverse diseases. And now, I do not find where to glance and where to go to comfort myself. And my sole hope and comfort is by giving myself wholly to God, by whom all things are possible. Unquote. At this stage, he was a broken man. He had buried his mother, Nanayecha, who was also the Asantehene. And within 26 days of that, his brother, Adjumabel, with whom he did many things together. John the Apostle wrote, "We speak of what we know and bear witness to what we have seen." Permpeh indeed had testimonies of foreboding. His tribute to the Apostle was his Anglican priest son, John, who practiced on the island of Mauritius. Permpeh's many policy reforms, from especially 1926, included lifting the ban placed on him by the British of one man, one wife. He argued that he had a private life, and there was the Ashanti's social expectation in that regard. A year before he died, he fulfilled his cardinal wish of bringing the remains of his 22 chief prisoners whom he had buried in the Seychelles to Kumasi. At the grand funeral he held for them, he told Kumasi and Asantehene of their loyalty and sacrifices to him, and asked all the families to reinter these remains, which have taken him 5 years to organize and to bring back. The other thing did 3 months before he died was the rebuilding in a state of despair of the Sacred Royal Mausoleum at Bantama on March 30, 1931. The British historian Thomas Lancaster paints the mausoleum as a spiritual group and tells us that the Asantehene Awukudae painting on the morning of April 27, 1868 had a spiritual conclave there and came back in sorrow, dying in the night. On that fateful day of May 12, 1931, there was another spiritual conclave of the kind. Permpeh I had been very ill, but had decided to attend Mass at the Cerebrates church. As he could not get out of his car, he listened to the hymns being sung. Later, he called for the wardens and gave them his offering, and went back to his palace. He died later in the day. Drawing down the curtains on this epic 19th century historical drama, of which he was the lead cast or dramatist personally. We will never know what was on his mind that day, except to say that Cyprian, that Baltar bishop of ancient Carthage, now modern day Tunisia, could have been his patron saint. Like him, Permpeh suffered many persecutions. The Anglican Church of St. Cyprian of Kumasi, the historian Emmanuel Champion, has remarked, must have held a very special place in his heart to deserve such an agonizing physical and spiritual tribute. We must not forget that it was at this same church that he had his official Thanksgiving service on his return from exile in 1959. He took to the service the golden stool and his attendants for protecting him over the years. Permpeh's Christian faith could be for some the antithesis of the Pauline doctrine of one Lord, one faith, one baptism. But then, ancient beliefs and adaptations sometimes come together with historical and cultural antecedents. For instance, major parts of the coronation of King Charles III, as we saw it, were based on the Book of Kings in the Old Testament, including the tunic shirt fashion or dress of the Byzantine or Roman antiquity. The role of Zodok, the priest, anointing Solomon, had its equivalents to the Archbishop of Canterbury taking King Charles through the rituals. The English believed in the Stone of Destiny, which was brought from Scotland and taken to the Westminster Abbey for the coronation service, was not different from Permpeh's golden stone at his Thanksgiving service almost a century ago. Now, 106 years after all this, the last announcement and air travel hears on final descent into Kumasi is welcome to Permpeh International Airport. At other times, the air hostess, with an assumption of your knowledge, says with a smile, welcome to Permpeh. Alas, he prevailed and made us empires of figurative history. The British knew this 9 months before his death, and amazed at Permpeh's resilience to rebuild his kingdom, King George V conferred on him the King's Medal for African Chiefs. This hypocritical gesture could be, in the words of their universal playwright, a situation of all is well that ends well. In 100 years after his return, what is the Asantehene palace has been walled of his 10-kilometer ancient forest. It will not be easy to destroy it as was done to Permpeh. It is now comparable, if not in its monument, at least in its attention to the Menelik or the imperial palace of Emperor Selassie in Addis Ababa. We will conclude this address with the Indian Nobel laureate B.S. Naipaul. In his well-known novel, A Bend in the River, are the opening lines. The world is what it is. Men who are nothing, who allow themselves to become nothing, have no place in it. Our secular prophet of old traditions was also our collective nemesis. It is because of that and whom his charger is today that our world is one of cultural renaissance. as you join in this renaissance, Your Excellency the President of Seychelles, you are also a participant witness of history, of faith, and adversity, an anthem of the Song of Moses. Over 40 years ago, you baptized two of Permpeh's great grandchildren who are with us today at the same St. Paul's Cathedral in your capital of Victoria, where Permpeh worships. They have traveled with you to be here in communion of one exile, many stories. In the end, Otumfuo, and as you remember the past, so will the future remember you.
Please, a round of applause for them, providing the creative juices for us to appreciate and digest this well-thought and insightful keynote by Mr. Aifo Ajimandia, Director at the Menchia Palace Museum. Please, a round of applause for him. What we want to do now, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is to gain two insights. The first will be the events leading to the exile, and the second will be the king in exile. These two insights will last together no more than 20 minutes. Speakers, please take note. I shall now invite this first speaker on events leading to the exile, the first trained social historian of medicine from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kumasi. Make welcome, Professor Samuel Edujefi.
His Royal Majesty, Otumfuo Asantehene, and Osei Tutu II, Her Royal Highness Lady Julia, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I stand on the existing protocol to proceed. A quick one, as we look at the presentation of Ivo, we are led to a very interesting narrative that tells who we have become as a people in this great Asante kingdom. However, in 1896, the story was very different. In fact, from between 1894 to 1896, there was an attempted coup on Permpeh I on the pretext that Asante had not kept the clauses concerning the indemnity that came from the Formula Treaty. But more so, there were other diplomatic overtures to ensure that there would be peace, because Asante did not only go to war, but Asante believed in diplomacy. And so whilst Asante kept to diplomatic overtures, in their minds they believed that the British would do same. In fact, when you look at what orchestrated the 1896 occurrence, we need to reflect on what had taken place in the 1880s, because there was a grand European conference that is popularly known as the Berlin Conference. In that conference, 2 or 3 major important things came up. The first one was effective occupation, and the second concerned the sphere of influence. British and other European engagements in Africa, for that matter, was that which aimed at exploiting the territory of Africa and to make good of her resources which nature had given to them. But it was not an equal relationship at all, because you see that in the case of the Gold Coast, the British had subtly and openly taken over the entire region, or the colony as it is referred to in the literature, except for the forest region of Asante. And so if the British would allow Asante to subsist as an independent kingdom, and for that matter an empire, it would, if you like, truncate its adventure. So several things were taking place at the time. There was competition between them. France, Germany, and other holdings and interests in Africa was ongoing. And for that matter, the British had to hold to their own, not only at the colony, but also to further advance to take over the entirety of Asante, to ensure that they govern safely and benefit from its resources. Fundamentally, if you look at the 1800s, you would understand that Asante had had a lot of encounters with the British, taking off from 1824, when McCarthy dared Asante power and he was decapitated. And more so, you will see that such encounters, which Ivor has spoken to in many ways, ended up with the Asantehene War. But the fundamental ethos of it is that Asante had great leaders and great kings who were warriors and who did not believe in colonization. And for that matter, such resistance persisted from 1824 up to 1896, when Permpeh was taken to Sierra Leone and afterwards to Seychelles. But the question is that when you look at the 1880 conference and the event at Berlin, you would understand that a lot of things were happening. And today, Africa is still being insulted by the West. And I dare to establish a point with that, and maybe I shall know because of time. You realize that when they showed interest in sharing the lands in Africa, Africa was not represented in that conference. I will refer to them as the G14, as we have today the G7. And these were the people: Germany, France, Great Britain, United States, Russia, among others. These were people who shared Africa on a piece of paper, but they had to effectively occupy Asante. The challenge at this time was that Asante had gone through many phases of difficulties and challenges. Kofi Kakari's challenge, and also the misrule which had occurred for a very long time. So look at Congo. King Leopold of Belgium wanted Congo. Belgium today has 11 million people. King Leopold of Belgium at the time wanted Congo, the heart of Africa's resources, and it was given to him on a silver platter. But that is what the African leaders, the African chiefs, who were democratically elected in their own enclaves, did not want that to happen. Exiling such leaders who were resisting colonization was a stock in their trade, and it is today a stock in their trade, because they intend to show all political actors and developmental agents who want to develop their people. And we saw that in Patrice Emerson Lumumba's assassination. And we saw that in other great leaders in Africa who were taken away, even in the 20th century. You are either exiled or you are killed. Before 1896, you would recall that King Agri of Cape Coast in 1867 had been sent to Sierra Leone. And he returned a sick man who denounced his own rulership and more so was put under stipend. It was an European agenda, a grand one which was undertaken. And that would go beyond diplomacy, because they wanted to absolutely take over the territory of Africa and also take over the territories of the Gold Coast, including Asante. The invasion had immediate and long-lasting consequences. The exile of Permpeh I disrupted traditional Asante political structures and facilitated the implementation of direct British administration. As Kimball knows, this transformation fundamentally altered the political landscape of the Gold Coast region. The economic consequences were equally significant. British control led to the reorganization of trade patterns and resource exploitation to benefit colonial interests. In fact, in 1998, when Dammit was writing, he said the post-invasion period was to increase or saw British investment in gold mining, agricultural production, with profits primarily benefiting colonial interests rather than local communities. The Asante engaged in extensive trade networks that facilitated the exchange of valuable commodities such as gold, ivory, and later rubber. This trade underpinned their military expansion and allowed them to wield considerable influence in regional politics. And that was exactly what the British wanted to truncate, among other things. The empire's interactions with colonial powers, notably during the Anglo-Asante Wars, exemplified the tensions that arose from competing economic interests. These conflicts ultimately led to British control over Asante territories, yet the empire managed to retain its cultural identity and governance structures even under colonial rule. However, from the 1800s, Asante military and diplomatic encounters with the British were aimed at demonstrating their determination of resisting subjugation and assert their autonomy amidst the pressure of European imperialism in the Gold Coast. The 1896 British invasion of Asante and the exile of Permpeh I represented the convergence of economic imperialism, political ambition, and strategic colonial interests. The event exemplifies how European colonial powers used military force to achieve economic and political objectives, often under the guise of establishing protection or civilization with racial undertones. The consequences of this invasion continue to influence Ghana's political and economic landscape today. This exilic episode marked the depletion, or better still, the ending of a century of intense diplomatic activity between Asante and its neighbors, including African and European nations, which had helped to develop and standardize practices related to diplomatic appointments, representations, conduct, and strategies in Asante native diplomatic practice. More so, Nana Permpeh's failure to put up any military resistance has been said, or against the British in 1896, has led to notions of surrendering his nation. The 28-year-long duration of his exile has also raised questions that the Asantehene may have been quite content to live in exile. In addition, he has been accused rather posthumously of collaborating with the British upon his repatriation to allow colonialism in Asante. Such naysayers have overlooked the fact that Asante at the time believed in diplomacy and also believed that the British would conduct themselves in like manner. Certainly, King Permpeh could not mortgage the future of Asante that has seen many wars, including the sack of Kumasi in 1874 and the internal unrest which have lasted for several years. The new military technology or hardware of the British was well known at the time. Asante had to live to fight another day. As you can see, the Union is well and alive today with its many opportunities, challenges, fortuitous ways. Thank you very much. I rest my case.
I cannot keep up. Professor Samuel Edujemfi, thank you for that very passionate presentation on the events leading to exile. Such fervor and militancy, like a freedom fighter. But let me give you some water. And so our next presentation is on the King in Exile. That will be soft, because it will be done by a director of Creole Language and Culture Research Institute, the University of Seychelles. I give you Dr. Penda Chopper.
I wish to greet the King of Ashanti and the President, the First Ladies, and everybody. Can we have the slide, please, the projection? Okay, here we go. It is a great honor for me to be present here in Kumasi today on this most auspicious occasion at the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the return of King Permpeh I to the place of his birth and the seat of the golden stool over which he reigned as the Asantehene before and after his exile, as I shall set out to prove in this presentation. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to my friend and mentor, Jean-Claude Pascal Mahoul, who availed me of this opportunity and who pointed me to the right sources and guided my approach to the problematic of King Permpeh's sojourn in Seychelles. I also take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ivor Ajiman Dua, who has been so diligent in ensuring our presence in Kumasi for this occasion. I'm very honored to have traveled in the company of Seychelles resident branch of the Permpeh royal family, the Permpeh Marimbas, hailing from my own district of Osei. I would like to point out that I've restricted my presentation to King Permpeh's sojourn in Seychelles and the impact it has had on Seychelles history and society, which is why I have called it Lasting Legacies. King Permpeh I arrived in Seychelles on 11th September in 1900. He was accompanied by 14 chiefs, 13 women, 13 children, 12 attendants, a total of 53 people. In 1901, the Queen Mother, Ya Asantehene, joined the King in exile. With her came another 15 chiefs, 2 women, 4 attendants, and this made a total of 75 of the Asante people who were exiled to Seychelles. Without intending to, the king's captors had made it possible for him to maintain his status as a king among his own people by availing him of his council of chiefs, and in that respect, he made good use of that opportunity, on which I will proceed to elaborate later. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the background, what Seychelles was like in 1900 when the King Permpeh arrived. The archipelago was still governed by the British Colonial Office as a dependency of Mauritius. The population was approximately 19,000 inhabitants. Seychelles society at that time could be described as a typical colonial plantation society, which had been founded on slavery. A very small minority of French colonial descendants owned most of the land, while a majority of the population, consisting mainly of slave descendants, including the progenies of abusive relationships between plantation masters and African slave women, worked on coconut or vanilla plantations. I'm sure all of you know this story. The British presence was felt mainly in the administrative positions, but it was nevertheless a position of power. This was a time when slave trafficking in the Indian Ocean region was still fresh in people's memories, and indeed, some recent scattered islands might still have been, especially amongst Seychelles scattered island, illegal slave trafficking could still have been going on. There is some evidence in that direction. So in this environment, compounded by the presence of a fresh stock of African ethnic groups among the population who had been liberated by British anti-slavery activities in the Indian Ocean, King Permpeh's reception by the community could have been very different than what it turned out to be, had it not been for his personality. So, I want to look now a little bit at the political conditions. When the Secretary of State for the Colonies, Joseph Chamberlain, inquired in July 1900 if arrangements could be made for the detention of the Asantehene and his retinue in Seychelles, the newly appointed administrator of Seychelles, Ernest Sweetescott, accepted it as an integral part of his colonial responsibilities, in the same manner that his predecessors had accepted the responsibility of the Sultan of Perak's exile between 1877 and 1895. As for the treatment of the king and his retinue, once they got there, it seems that, though in theory the Asantehene was stripped of his status, and indeed he was officially referred to as ex-King Permpeh I, he was in fact treated with every respect and dignity, and was accepted as the leader of the inmates of what was known as the Ashanti camp. Examples of this are Governor Sweetescott's invitation of the king, his mother, and all his chiefs to the celebration of King Edward VII's 60th birthday on 9th November 1901. And in 1903, he was there with his entourage to celebrate the unveiling of the Victoria Clock Tower in memory of Queen Victoria. So, as you can see, this is a stamp. Sorry. This is a stamp in honor of King Permpeh, and that was in 1965. So that tells you that he was revered. People had respected him and had a good memory of him. Okay, so King Permpeh, once he had settled down, he was a very practical leader. He set to organizing the day-to-day running of the Ashanti's place of exile to ensure a sustainable and harmonious environment for the small group immediately in his care. And he noticed that the grounds of the place Asantehene was very fertile, so he set about establishing a farm to produce foods such as plantain, potatoes, maize, cassava, etc. And the whites were especially engaged in the rearing of pigs and hens, both for consumption and for sale in the community, which of course afforded an opportunity to mix with the local population and exchange with them. Most significant in this venture is the fact that King Permpeh attempted to earn a more stable income for his people by seeking to establish a vanilla plantation, which was a common cash crop in Seychelles at the time. So he didn't just sit back and rely on his allowance. He tried to become self-sufficient, or at least to become more self-sufficient and not too dependent. The colony experienced food shortage during the First World War, but in the Ashanti camp, their crops ensured that they did not lack nourishment. So I want to talk a bit about education now. One of the king's most notable accomplishments during his exile was that he attained an education in the culture of his oppressors and ensured that his children and the children of his entourage did too. So having started to read and write with his Fonte interpreter, Timothy Corsa, King Permpeh was soon writing to the principal of Victoria School in Seychelles to assist him with books and copybooks to pursue his learning further. And did he write? We've just been told. According to Seychelles historian Tony Machot, King Permpeh was often seen at Carnegie Library in around 1910 or so, borrowing books. The king also arranged for a school to be built in the Ashanti camp for the smaller children and for the older children to go to school in Victoria. Records have been kept in the archives of the letters he sent to petition the government on the rising cost of school fees for his sons, and other letters, mainly petitioning to be repatriated. So King Permpeh I put the education acquired by himself and his sons to good use, the most amazing example of which is his compilation with his son Frederick of the work entitled The History of Ashanti Kings and the Whole Country Itself. So this is nothing short of visionary, and definitely the action of a king with foresight and progressiveness. His valorization of his country's culture is further illustrated by his desire to have someone teach him to read and write the Ashanti language. And the photo on the left is precisely that. Is the letter, a written letter where they refuse to allow him to have someone to teach him in his language, the language of the Ashanti. The king also saw the necessity of learning the Creole language in order to smooth relations between his entourage and the local people, to learn from them and to exchange with them. So, one of the most intriguing legacies of King Permpeh's exile in Seychelles is the traditional Asante pharmaceutical knowledge shared with the local people. There are stories of the local people seeking medical advice and cues from the Ashanti camp, something which was facilitated by the women of the camp. Most interesting is the legacy of Seychelles' most renowned herbalist, whose fame is said to have spread throughout the Western Indian Ocean, Mr. Charles Zialor of Oswaya district. He was said to have gained his knowledge from the Asante traditional doctors. There are even allegations of a book of Asante pharmaceutical knowledge having been in the possession of Zialor. Since it is already known that King Permpeh was intent on committing Asante traditions, history and practices to paper, it wouldn't be impossible for such a book to have been compiled by members of his retinue. And certainly, it is a fact that two of his chosen followers in exile were traditional Ashanti court physicians, not witch doctors, physicians, namely Kwaku Afre and Kwame Yeboah. So, according to historian A. Abu Boahen, King Permpeh's eagerness to convert to the Christian religion was second only to his concern over education. Permpeh must be playing with it. Now it's all over the place. Okay. Okay, I think we are back on track. Okay, so I'd like okay, let me finish about religion. While the king did not outrightly impose Christianity on his followers, I'm not touching it, he's doing that on his own. While he did not outrightly impose Christianity on his followers, he did encourage them to convert, and they were soon receiving religious instructions from the Church Missionary Society, the continuity of which the king tried to insist on in spite of limited resources. So it was also a form of his education. On 29th May, the Queen Mother and King Permpeh and some of the other inmates were baptized in the Anglican Church of Victoria. And the king's vision in this respect was crowned, as we have just been told, by his son John's successful entry in the Anglican clergy after a period of study in Mauritius. It seems that this legacy was carried on in Ghana, where after the king's repatriation, most of his people also converted. Okay, so now, for the most important part of this presentation, lasting legacies. There can be no ties stronger than genetics between families and people, so we know that. And King Permpeh I has left behind such a legacy in both Ghana and Seychelles, a fact that is illustrated by the reunion of family members from both sides of the continent on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of his repatriation. The king's memory of the archipelago and his sojourn there, as well as the Seychellois people's memories of him, has resulted in the strengthening of diplomatic ties between Seychelles and Ghana, and most importantly, between the Seychellois and the Ashanti. This is symbolized by the presence of the President of Seychelles and his delegation at the invitation of the Ghanaian government and the present at Asantehene, Otumfuo, Nana, Osei, Tutu II. The bonds between our two countries are cemented not only by our historical ties and memories of friendship and respect between both parties, but also by the fact that members of King Permpeh's entourage, including his sons, married Seychellois women, thus linking the bloodlines of these two nations. So Ghana and Seychelles, we can never fight because we are family. Examples of these genetic bonds directly linked to King Permpeh I himself through his son James Boaki Permpeh are the Permpeh Marimba family, through Mary Permpeh Marimba, daughter of Princess Susie Marie Permpeh. And as you can see, the family grows, which is a good sign for the Permpeh descendants in Seychelles. And Princess Iket Permpeh. These are only two examples. I know there are many more. James Boaki Permpeh's eldest daughter, Princess Iket, who had several children, one of whom, Molly Permpeh, made a visit to Seychelles in 2015, where she was given a warm welcome by her Seychellois relatives, as well as the general public, especially after she displayed the ability to speak Creole, even if she had left Seychelles as a young child. As she saw the name Princess Permpeh held by somebody at the jetty, Victoria, she called out, "La Mola," which means "here I am" in Creole. So she never forgot. So So there's Molly and members of her relatives in Seychelles. So in conclusion, a remarkable aspect of Seychelles' history is that its insularity made of it a perfect prison without bars for the British Empire's exile of kings, sultans, and other types of leader figures who stood in the way of their imperial designs. It must be said that among all the royal exiles who came to Seychelles, King Permpeh I left the most lasting impression and legacy. I would like to end by pointing out that though he was deposed by the British and was forced to refer to himself as the ex-king, he remained throughout his exile the Asantehene. As is pointed out by Joseph K. Ajayi, in all his actions, he acted as a king. His deposition resulted from his decision to negotiate peace with the British colonial powers in a civilized and honorable manner, even to the extent that he refused to endanger his people by taking up arms when he was outnumbered in men and arms. Once deposed, he set about adapting to the situation mainly through education and conversion, all with the aim of building his people's resilience for a more long-term survival in a world where he readily recognized the fact that his proud nation of warriors no longer had the upper hand. Symbolic of the fact that the Ashanti never complied with the British deposition of the Asantehene is Frederick Permpeh's reference to him as King of Ashanti in a letter to his father dated 1911 when he was still a detainee. The Asantehene's royal welcome, both upon his disembarkation at the port and his arrival in Kumasi in 1924, are testimonies to the resilience and survival of the Ashanti's identity and culture. I thank you.
We're grateful to you, Dr. Permpeh, Director of Creole Language and Culture Research Institute, University of Seychelles, for giving us that good appreciation of our king in exile. It now falls to the UNESCO representative to Ghana, Mr. Edmond Mukala Ngwemu, to share his thoughts with us.
Otumfuo, Osei, Tutu, Asantehene, the Princess Purport of Asantehene, Lady Julia Osei Tutu, President of the Republic of Seychelles, His Excellency Wavel Ram Kalawan, First Lady of the Republic of Seychelles, His Excellency Linda Wamka Lawan, the second President of the Fourth Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Otumfuo, Nanamon, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests here present. It is quite really challenging to take the floor after these eminent experts who have spoken, and in particular, living this extraordinary historical moment that we are all witnessing today, and representing the United Nations institution here present. I'm really humbled, ready to take the floor and not to acknowledge that as I see the President of Seychelles here, we are actually celebrating also the hospitality, though in hardship, in hard times, of Seychelles, in enabling us today. If we're enjoying what we're witnessing today, it is also thanks to that hospitality and the deliberate effort done by the Kingdom of the Republic of Seychelles. And which brings me really to the realization, as our last speaker really highlighted, that we are celebrating the Ashanti Kingdom has also extension places, and in particular the Republic of Seychelles, which today I have learned a very powerful truth, which one has to be now careful that it is not just in Ghana, but when you go to Seychelles, you will also find Ghana. So the first element that I've learned through this intervention is really that extended and the hospitality, and also the element that we are celebrating with this part of the African culture. So at this momentous day, marking the centenary return of Asantehene, Otumfuo Permpeh, one from exile in the Seychelles, UNESCO extends its heartfelt congratulations to the people of Asantehene and Ghana. This historic event is not only a significant milestone in the cultural heritage of the Asantehene Kingdom, but also a poignant reminder of its people's resilience and enduring spirit. As one of our experts clearly said, that the glory or the greatness of a kingdom is reside in the duty to remember. And as we have been witnessed and looked into the past interventions, looking into that very rich and painful memory, but also demonstrating the strength, the resilience, as well as the effort to look into the future, one cannot but just remember that the greatness of the kingdom of Ashanti also resides in its effort in rebuilding, in revitalizing its culture. And I think that's all being done in the investment of His Majesty, Royal Majesty Asantehene Otumfuo Osei Tutu, for all the work that he has been accomplishing in the last 25 years. What we have witnessed, what we have celebrated, I had the privilege of traveling with him and also with His Excellency the President. We were part of the British Museum with all the British experts. While we were talking about the restitution of cultural relics and cultural objects that were taken abroad in many parts of the world. And you know that Africa is still struggling to restitute most of its relics. His Majesty brilliantly, in a very powerful but very futuristic vision approach, he highlighted, and I say futuristic because even within the UN system we've been debating how to restitute, how to bring back. He put on the table a solution where all civilizations, where African relics has been taken, will come into Kumasi and will celebrate the ingenuity, the creativity, the priceless value of those cultural heritage. Because you and I know the reason why they are kept into the museum is because they are priceless. The reason why we want it back, because they are priceless. The reason why we need to transmit them to the future generation, because they are priceless. But having the brilliant idea of bringing the children of the world, both young and old, to sit on the same table and to celebrate the African ingenuity and creativeness, that one did not really cross anyone's mind but except His Majesty. And I want to really applaud that legacy. We are talking about the legacy of revitalization of cultural heritage transmission to future generation. It is also in that very same line, as we saw very clearly when when he visited the Seychelles. He said, we can mourn about the painful chapter of the past, and we know it very clearly that even out of the desert, in the scorching sun of the desert, even beautiful flowers also springs out. It is the same. Yes, it has been a very painful chapter, and we have the duty to remember. But at the same time also, we have the responsibility to build a future of peace and development. And that's exactly what he has said. He's looking forward into building, in bringing, and forging really different bridges. So those legacies that we just really see from his various interventions brought us with the Marshall Museum to work already on one proposal, which is to create a prize, an award prize for young creative artists who will convert both. He's stressing me. I tried hard not to read the speech because it's so long, so I just tried really to summarize. So we're working, Your Majesty, we're going to work on the prize to enable young Ghanaian artists both in Ghana and also abroad in seeing how they are going to scale up, learn from their elders, how those jewelry, those cultural objects were crafted, the techniques. We want to make sure that it is transmitted to the younger generation. That's point number one. Point number two, we want to make sure that there is an award that is also given to these young ones, and that's one of the work that we are doing already with Ivo and all of his team. And we're hoping, God willing, that by May 2025, we will be able to come with some good news to ensure that that prize award will bear your name. But it's not just bearing your name, it's the legacy that your name carries that we want really to ensure that it is really highlighted. So without taking too much time, I just want to say that, all that we have listened is talking about the legacy of what His King Majesty really have done, both from the time that he has really taken his reign and how he's really driving the revitalization of the Ashanti Kingdom culture heritage, not only for the Ghanaian, but for the rest of the world. And I thank you.
One more time, a round of applause. Mr. Edmond Nkala Igwemo, the UNESCO representative to Ghana, to this occasion. And now, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a breathtaking experience as I give to you the Center for National Culture, Kumasi, and the interpretation of our King, Nana Ajiman Permpeh the First.
The tale of Nana Ajimai Permpeh I, the 13th king of the Asante Empire. A reign marked by a riveting saga of turmoil, conflict, heart-wrenching tragedy, and heroism. This fearless leader, who ruled from the 26th of March 1888 until his death in 1931, faced countless challenges from the onset. Permpeh's ascension to the throne was marked by a brutal civil war, which left deep scars and divided loyalties among the Asantes. The states of Mampong, Awukudae, Insuta, Adamsi, and Dadiase refused to recognize his authority, while Kumasi, Permpeh, Tabe, Eduso, Offenso, and Nkoranza stood by him. And yet, as he navigated these treacherous landscapes, Permpeh faced an even greater threat: the British Empire's relentless pursuit of control over the Ashanti Kingdom. With his unwavering dedication to preserve Asante sovereignty, Nana Ajimai Permpeh resisted British deals and sweetheart proposals, sparking a maelstrom of conflict and intrigue. With a heart full of peace, he defended his people against the British. And yet the British, determined to destroy Asante sovereignty, sowed discord among the people, turning brother against brother and chief against chief. And yet, Nana Ajimai Permpeh remained resolute, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his kingdom. The British exiled him to the Seychelles in 1896 for his defiance. But even in the darkest depths of despair, Permpeh's legacy endured, inspiring generations to come. Join me on this captivating journey into the heart of Asante history as we unravel the complex tale of Nana Ajimai Permpeh I, a monarch who embodied the very essence of courage, wisdom, diplomacy, and sacrifice.
And Sunday, when you see a Canada, every year, what's up? Nide! And then, and you will see a come on. What is that? What I should do? What I should do?
And then you turn down. Osei Tutu ya mekasi with the land. And then the young people will come for. And I said, Tina, come on, before. No, so she's a gas. Nasia, before my better body. But for my beer to send women, that's what any year done. And go out, hey, now come here. But this year, one no 20. Who can someone get here the young woman of each year? What's the coming? What's the coming? Now, I want to do this. I can't have a room sound that go on now. Also, what is it? I'm you will not answer sadly. I hope so. It's passing on. What is it? I visit my account. I can't one. Not prepared. Then I have to go to pass away. It is about it. I'm not better. I'm not sure if you did it yet. Good job.
Timeto Nana Mam said, my papa.
Nana no said your Penzosia, a song of papa.
You say that one must suffer, be a two suffer one was here.
And I know you got so what I must say. Sabria or Trin suffer one, what was here.
I say, be friend one more, and I had not half from me, second from Bradley, Tina, say one rabbit.
I'm also a friend one. Lay a cat out of Fra, the Saka free, I'm not with you. 18 friend.
And I know said that I'm not lost.
You got some Dadana, and I'm not beside you.
You can send my one for me, Asantehene.
Open Flossie, you can, I'm not the same, or my pine, now go for me. I
say, the my pine, Mark, will never see me mention of my say.
I feel so, you can say my pine, I'm not going to see me as I met him once.
May I my friend and be any
I feel so, open so again.
And I myself from Radio Sandia, the Council says, and I'm just to be a Muslim, obedient and
I feel open so say, young man, Sadia Catch me, so what dear someone, Yaman, no dispute, and you went here, now Permpeh, good Janica, went here.
I said, in one for I know you also get here, probably 2 years, so not the actual one that changes.
You are saying, I'm not the same. Say, you went here, then some more day, that's when you should be, and you're about to now prepare yourself. Now, what they are Trewana, I be seeing us.
And I'm my friend, one way is a for Promise.
And I don't do that for friend one. No, when is a for frat, I'm not on side. And I know, Madame, said your prince was here. Madame, and I know, what's up?
Too much of it.
Yes, sir.
David, you know. And now someone was spoke for father. A young Fusa. When you answer, yes, and when Chevy, and Sunday, I never trust up one. Then I know your way. What a man! What a weapon! And that's what to say, timidly. Bassa, c'est ce que tu as fait. À quoi bien vous bénéficiez?
Madam, I just go feel fine. I have fun in Casa. What's it? And some no cracking. I'm not going to show you. It's a way. The officer says, I am here, all this year in my life. When I wear home, you're up, madam. Yet, your woman is saying, the bedroom will come. I'm very soon. I feel to see. I didn't know what I had the friend of Sino at the Awukudae. Then some was when you were happy. Then Pedro were happy. Asantehene to the Tiasupi or from No. Office could look over to But you see, Savona said what I was so sad. I was to call your dad. So when I have it's someone else who you know that. 670 say, don't listen, man. Let's down you. Yet, I was one part, you were trying to come through. And I asked no message. Now you have a ticket. It's a party. I am what I pray of who am I? And then what did it tell? David is in the attack.
And now, I said, I didn't come Canada. And Papa, who are Ama Mampo, Pocofu, that I say, near that say, I could think at your mother, and I'm going to say, and some way here. Give me that. Maybe they said if I'm going to buy, but I don't know my Mamma, I will say, don't go on in my ear. That's what my ear or the baby are. Yes, this is my
said that you should need the more brain of Papa. We said, set bed was to say, who is up.
Now, just you know, Adama said an upper person was to say, somebody you go to between you for Cham, Madame, your quite. You will say, when the mouth now will try to time, I think what to say, or what to know, what to grow. Madama said, and I'm a say.
Abraham above one corner, so Marcus or no, the Kaiser, one who's I am the above one for
And now, Madame, I said, you must say, Madame, you can't tell me myself. You said to me, like, oh, baby, you are him. See the way you can, or not to not to do. Now, prepare, Madame, said in an atmosphere.
Actually, you went to another mom say, I need to find out what they are, Kataya, and to press over myself.
And I know, Sadia, now Papaciano, or see a feel so, you pop us over the door. Yama, and also what they done, and also Sandy, I can't tell you. Madame, I will catch and say, imagine of it. You in Pia, often Pia, and in your dream, come, have a time. When you have a time of a titty, you can't remember to get it, your massive. Not for Yaba. That dreaming again and a pop. The first answer. What did you declare? Ever place? The Palestine was your master. Yeah, no, yeah. What do you want to do about you? A master, that is going to now, Papa, what I was saying, and I'm saying.
Actually, Tiamen to another mum semi that one master papa.
Now, Papa, what I was papa.
Said yet another one, I'm rather than penny for one more to one person here.
Said then I Papa said, no, some number of minutes or what you want as a year. Now, yes, you are trusting myself for fire. You are seeing trusting my answer as some of my idea campus. See, I'm here, campus. Young boy, yes, personal church anymore with the change of personal better Shasa. Now, I was not a personal church anymore. Change personal better Asantehene.
Tiamen and I'm mum says a kind of pain, never see face and my name was Santa, my young chapels for Papa once to the other. That's it, young and I don't such an Permpeh. At my pump, what's your or sister or tears here, or no Asantehene, or Mumba was Coco, and I see the other. And I'm who you there are some who you there are some who you means 25 cents to you. There are some 25 cents to you. There are one was one more. So pay yen or so for Jack. There are some over Jack, men of one of Thomas was super. There are one town and home and for I'm young super. I couldn't pay them for maintenance in the book Marcus Coco. There are one trusting and who go broke. I'm a Pescoco with you. And I'm going to be a better thing yet. My better therefore, you will say your pioneers. Medias, when I am Santa said, Asantehene. You can see only here as you be one or Asantehene. Said the way Asantehene. The person get to Raven and see a bench as was Asantehene. But to some flowers already. There are passing getting a prayer and having to see a just for you. Or for the Safran, for so often a deep progress in the river. Actually, said the Ayana can be a bit trouble from an upper project, my professors and taking my myself. She's a country player, Yamunia, and I don't know. Such an African what's the event of I walk up with you now. Not provision. For a man of mine, some which is I got you from there. And say, you're just here. I say you are my phone to full work session and tell my bread and your money. You can say, did you say your name and I'm not a fire? Your mother for the people. What you tell them, Asante, I'm a bread and money. Here, make that your name. Sure. That's a cosa. May say, that's a cosa. You're a madam, actually, put you about doing in general. Was it on through a drive from the said John answer? Sure. Answer? Sure. After what time? Sure. Well, go for go. Sure. Well, go for my. Sure. But not for that. Sure. Yo, and I feel good. Yo, and I know, yo, I work for anybody to one more. I'm not one to see and I work to see. Yo, Nana, Sadia, Nana, or since I work for you, I have to work. And you work for one to one, I'm not going to you. Never can say, young potential. And I know, now, Papa say, one guy who say, young potential, and 1 year. The sanity of the artist for a man. I shall make that ticket. You don't see that pocket ticket. That pocket ticket. You don't see that pocket ticket. You don't see pocket ticket. I shall make it say a ticket. You don't see pocket ticket. Let's see guy benefits at one. Let's go benefits at one. Yet they are my book. You are my picture. Yet they are my book for them. Come here, my routine. I shall make it. Musa banti mama membra meka sa meka tuonu musa woyi yene sa sei na sema tuoni kwa basafu sa keje sa gola wonu moja kodu enjo kube akida na na banti watu masage na baba selu sema tu fatam demani tiora ta batma ka ba okuma ka na mbika na zuya kwa yako na ye na hamu ni tu ona kusi ya demba kujibu yet to ana be ka se da bi non mama no e be kwa de tira bo na le chido le to ro ti ma tina kase ti ma be kan na be ko da ma se de ba to se no and you will say sana ba ti ma kan ye le ba ko na no be se da na pra pa se pa da ho wa ya ni da se mu ko ti ayi da
Your Excellency, our former Governor, Sir William Bloodwood Griffith, is gone on retirement. As a result, Her Excellency, Queen Victoria of the British Government, has appointed Sir William Maxwell as the new governor of the Gold Coast.
Thank you, gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to serve with the best elite of scouting, of military tactic and administration. It is an honor, but also a deep responsibility. As you know, the UP powers are racing for war. They try to get as much weapons as possible needed for that to tap into new markets, fueling their industry, being able to secure the different resources. And the world is not for a period of peace. We are preparing for war. We are not nice and gentle anymore. This is the reason why my first task has been given to come here in Cape Coast and to resolve once for all the Ashanti problem.
This should be interesting. The Ashantis are not going to give up without a fight. Your Excellency, in 1891, Permpeh offered to take Asante under British protectorate. Came from confidence in his effort to revive and strengthen the Asante Empire. Declining the offer by saying, I might say this is a matter of a very serious consideration, and which I'm happy that we have arrived at this conclusion, that my kingdom of Asante will never commit itself to any such policy. Asante must remain independent as if all, at the same time being friendly with all white men.
Exactly. That's where the whole problem is. We are in conflict. We are preparing. The Germans are in the Volta region, the French in the Côte d'Ivoire. We, in the international race for power, it is only a question where the flags have been planted and where not. We have received your different reports in London. We have analyzed them deeply. Thank you very much for all your effort. And we have, the administration has arrived to the conclusion that it is not a good idea to underline the existing treaty, the Fomena Treaty of 1974. I have already written a letter to Permpeh asking him urgently to follow what the other kings have promised. One, we want to be able to interfere into the activity, so we need to have local British residents in Kumasi to be able to figure out things and act much more instinctively, and also to influence much more the population. Second, we need to have our markets, our goods flow to the market, destroying the artisanship. Three, we need the local population to hate their own traditions of their fathers to come to our civilized world. Fourth, it has been promised that a lot of gold will be paid. Right now, the empire is expecting some 50,000 ounces of gold. If the Ashantis would pay that, they would have much less aggressivity in our direction. Last but not least, Julius Caesar, 2,000 years ago, explained divide to rule. We have asked in the Fomena Treaty, and they have accepted, that any tribe rebelling against them, asking for our protection, will be left in that positive state for us, and this is not happening.
Your Excellency, as I always said, we have to possibly send troops to Kumasi to prepare the ground for another war with the Ashantis. When Sir Garnet sent troops to conquer them, they became afraid of us. The war made them lose vast territories. We also looted their royal regalia and rich treasures.
As the governor has said, we have to review our strategies against the Ashantis. Inasmuch as we have previously fought and conquered them, anytime some of the floating factions like Mamon, Suta, Otumfuo, attempt to join our government, and then unexpectedly they change their mind.
Yes, I know that the king is very politically powerful, but we have to find another solution.
We have to take action.
Exactly.
Your Excellency, I think we have to send soldiers and arrest King Permpeh and put him in prison.
Yes, this might be a very good idea, Chamberlain.
Your Excellency, you have a visitor.
Yes.
Your Excellency,
Yes.
this is Hamitia, an informant from Asantehene.
Be welcome, Kwamitua. You are welcome in this place just like yours.
Hey, Abasama. I'm not the same. They can't do that on our power. Abasama. Your Excellency, Hamitia is an honest person. All the information he gives us are very accurate. And he says he came to welcome you and make you aware of everything that is going on in Asantehene.
This is exactly what we needed.
Yes.
Tell him I have great presents for people like him.
Hamitia, I think I'm all the time. I say, I know someone, it's a baby. Or what I tell you, so good tomorrow. Okay.
So, as an informant, I would need to know what is the latest development in the Ashanti Kingdom.
Exactly.
As we have the desire to bring the Ashanti Kingdom into modernity, knowing the fact that his desires will be quite part of our efforts.
I'm not going to bring that there. Although I'm going to no, about some Nazara. How do you think?
I'm not a the next month I'm not say. Katana, what program I'm going to do, exactly. What I've been home. Now, what can I say? As you see it, I'm not this one. Now, you can't tell me myself as I said, they said, I'm not going to do I don't think, or my wife is a move to work for, I would say, what him out. Come on, guys, exactly. I don't want to trouble. And yet, on him out, as I said, and I want to move. I don't tell me about it.
Your Excellency, he says, Nana brother has received your letter, but he doubted you. And he and his chiefs started insulting you to the extent that they sent a delegation to go to Victoria Permpeh. Yes, to verify if she sent you to write that letter. So he came here to inform you.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, I'm sorry. I think we have to send our soldiers and arrest these chiefs.
Yes, but first, our position is not yet compromised much. For sure, my reputation, the reputation of my father, my grandfather, all loyal subjects of the Queen, are questioned by such an obscure delegation. But who are they? Here there are princes and kings. Over there, they're just well-dressed, anti-Christian rebellious troops, rebellious against the
I
empire.
think it is King Permpeh's counselors that have given him that idea. Else, there's no way he would decide to bring such hefty debts upon himself.
Osei, indeed, Awukudae, another from the wide imagine.
I will just tell Otumfuo that I have increased the present because of his goodwill. Reassure him that it will be his name that will be recalled by Victoria, not the delegation, not those chiefs. Tell him, please follow you to our head officer so that he can give the name of all those sub-chiefs that are trying to interfere in our politics. He is greatly pardoned for this.
Yes, Excellency. I'll be given so that you give me the list.
Great. Gentlemen.
That's it.
Gentlemen, this meeting, who was a bit caring for me, has found quite some interesting information. I think we should be careful not to relieve ourselves of the international stress for our diplomatic situation.
We keep delaying for too much.
We are going, but we need to stay calm and find the best way possible. With all the different ways that Nicholas Machiavelli has taught in his book, and this is what we are going to do. So please stay alert and think about it. We are going to act.
Madama, Mitranana, SSA. Yabayura Papa, Yabohema tell you, I can't swap Papa. I said, no. Otumfuo my head, so we like in a Yadehema and seven Quambra. Yabayana, that what those affairs are on my head. Nana problem. Brigisi, the same said your name boy. What's your name? So man, to buy the sign about watching us when I'm back and then say, what's your name to say? Over what chairman and why man. That's what I said. What's the answer? Yes, at mine, and yes, or take that one as well. Obu and net. Do that. Whatever, don't want him. My uncle, I'm not telling you how. Then your friend is here. It's here. Came back to I'm not ready. Why is that to be headed? What could I tell it? What could we shoot you? What could you do for baby after you 20 years old? I'm not ready. What benefit? Yeah. Achame. Sure. Came back to Nanano Mam Sam that one must say something suffer one. What do you say? Sure. Nanano said you're not going to say, so that must say. So to the suffer, what do you say? One number can never know how you share it to a buffalo say, what was your brother, the man of Asantehene. Sure. You're not so much I am, you see. Then I had to go to room, say in trouble for now we'll see Amrado, and in the Mano, Asantehene. Yes, I'm for the man, Rado, Jesus, and Fidia Santama, you say, oh, good near Pandem, your person, the veteran of Marciano, I feel you hit me the number. Sure. You're a say, Yama, I'm not a footy. Say, oh, good near Baya, as I said, about a better Marcy, said you see a devil. I say, Asantehene, please. I'm not for no Baba country, and say, I'm not to say what I now so try the just what in that stuff for both Marcy. Now, Grandpa say, about one of the country, they said, I'm not to say, somebody in the country, what it, no one can and just say, what in the doctor, both Marcy. Nuntis and yes, you have my name, you will need, and never see your dinner better than Marcy having what I do today. Sure. It's not Grandpa say, send a move that tire. Then you're going to know senior or the neighbor Massey and any occasion. And I know you're going to see Diana or some my father. What am I? I am one man to say, I'm not in the dog. About the or the speaker form getting a one against sure. The mention and I'm some simple beer management. Now, purposely, more beer management. You did the Asante, young one in the was as is why you did before. Young one in the was as is why you did a trap of war. And I know someone says, Asantehene, Papa, you didn't remember Secretary was at the end when you before. There I say, on what you said, Asantehene, Papa, you didn't play. I'm not Secretary, I didn't have Permpeh or no Mankaka, the Tico.
Abrofia
yaka wana se we yoga abrowana.
Etikeka okunwa dia kobia nya be masasa.
Etikeka okunwa dia kobia nya be masasa.
Saka so bia nye tini tie sema apostle ko ka che sasa pe ni say wo se do program a wo tiri.
Sio. Etikeka okunwa dia kobia nya ti. Na ikutie dia apostle ko e wo ka che Asante. Efi se wo bia nya be ma esi Asante.
You are Madam. I feel so confused. You are Kasaya, Medanasi. You will be forced. I'm not to the soldier for up by the check Massimania and no more. The woman that you can't buy. I'm not to the phone check. Send a man your time. We need to learn to say, kill once. Never to the phone. So the phone thing is not this.
I know. Officer will look original. The penny see, set. So people soon want to see you. I saw when you're going to and took what upon your spoke by Jack. I thought that it was good. I don't know the chance, but can't tell you was. I thought I would hear from you. I don't know what from when I see it by Saturday when it just that way. Me or from super local here. I think that from Indians are from Northern Chassa. It's only a country.
In their anger towards Nana Permpeh for defying them, for resisting them, arrested him, his chiefs and his family, and exiled them all to the Seychelles. In order to do that and take control of the Asante Empire, they painted Asante cultural histories as vile and evil. They painted a cultural practice like human sacrifice as barbaric, and ironically such sacrifices were not unique to Africa. The ancient Britons too sacrificed humans to their gods, Taintates and Tyrannus. By depicting African traditions as vile and evil, they sought to legitimize their control over Asante Empire. But King Permpeh, wise and endearing, resisted the British rule, and for that they were exiled. The story of the British remains a complex web of intrigue, power, and politics. And yet this is the story of one man who stood tall and resisted oppression. This is the story of a king, kind, courageous, and wise. This is the story of Nana Ajiman Permpeh I, the 13th king of the Asante Empire. Thank you.
Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Majesty, if it pleases you at this point, humbly I ask that as many as can, we observe a celebration of those who parted in the Seychelles and could not make it home, for they too have been and continue to be the bearers of the heaviest burden for our freedoms that we enjoy today. This I so pray. And so we shall all rise, and for 100 seconds, we shall not be silent. We shall rise, we shall roar, we shall clap, we shall celebrate and immortalize the memory of all who passed in the Seychelles and could not make it home. This is to our forebears.
To our mother Yasantua, to the great manager, to the least who passed in glory in the Seychelles, we see rest in glory. Your legacy lives on. A resounding round of applause once again. round of applause for them. And this is a piece of the entire experience that's been put together to celebrate our king, and that's my Permpeh first. Saying thank you on behalf of all the collaborators for today's event, it's my pleasure to invite the chair of the Tutu Foundation, who is Otumfuo Wachineji, Wachineji II, Otumfuo Yahweh. Please make it welcome.
Your Royal Majesty Otumfuo II, please permit me to express our appreciation for today's event. It is only because of your vision, wisdom, and resourcefulness that we can all experience today's activities. This has been the immense combination of activities that started in February of this year, when we celebrated the 150-year anniversary of the Cerebrates War, followed by the Grand Durbar in May. And now we have the 100-year anniversary of the return of King Permpeh, the first from Seychelles. Otumfuo, we can't thank you enough for the opportunity that you've given all of us to be part of this year's celebration. It has been a year that we can never forget. And for the Excellency, Your Excellency, President of Seychelles, Reverend Kalaman, and the First Lady, thank you for taking time to cross the ocean, which our King Permpeh also traveled to come and join us today, and also for the next 2 days. It's been incredible. And for all excellencies, former President Otumfuo, Excellency British High Commissioner, and Ananum, we thank you all for joining us today. It's been unbelievable. What we have witnessed today is one that will go down in the annals of Asante history. We thank the cultural performance group. We were amazing, just like we were in February. We hope to see the final and the full version of what you have displayed to us today. And for the eloquent speakers, Professor Chopa from Seychelles, Ivar Dimendia, and the eminent speaker, Professor Edu, the man with the film. We really thank you all for your deliverance of these amazing speeches and presentations. The multimedia group behind us, thank you very much. Otumfuo Ensemble, really want to thank you for this expression of Asante culture and music and dance. And for the cultural group that gave us this performance, we thank you immensely. But before I finish, I also want to express our great appreciation to the Silver Jubilee Planning Committee, led by our able Nana Chair, Cerebrates II. And we thank you very much for leading us through the year from the beginning to now. The Silver Jubilee Planning Committee has been working in the background of all of this, made up of Barry Masabu Awukudae, and Nana Ifa Painting from Pata, Barry Mojiaboa Mangwa, Kuntanasi, and J. Koko Techiri, Tuobodom, and now Okitechi Amwa Otru, Kuntuchia, Japekrum, and I Jakumenti Fee, Mangwa Hima, and I Jabin, Afrakuma Kusi Bodum, Oguhima, Jamfua Safuachi, Ajimago, Suakwamu, myself, Hanibe Yahini, and then Suas Pukwajiman, Tufuachi Amehini, and I could see Ura Kuntihini, Mr. Kofi Bedu, the Chief of Staff, Mr. Asantehene, Mr. Secretary, and Awukudae, and Dr. Mensa Bunsu. These 17 individuals have been in charge of all these organizations ending up today. And we're not done yet. We have tomorrow to go, which will be the Durbar at Bojawi at Malaysia. And then finally, the Thanksgiving service, which will be the exact 100th year of the anniversary that we are celebrating. And will take place at St. Cyprian Cathedral, where we will be honored to hear from His Excellency, the President of Seychelles, who will also double up as the preacher. So don't miss that. So thank you all for making the day and for coming to join us, and wish you all safe travels back home. And we wish our King many, many years of amazing wisdom and resourcefulness. Long live the king. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you, Otumfuo Asantehene, Chairman of the Otumfuo Tutu II Foundation, Mohiniba Wachi Eji Wahine II. At the end of this event, that's after the prayer, Your Majesty, respectfully, I shall invite you together with the official party for 3 sets of photographs. That's agreeable. And so today, God Almighty, and the whole world call on us to answer one important question. What are you willing to sacrifice for Asantehene? For our father, Nana Ajiman Permpeh, it was his life, his freedom, his everything. May we respond favorably when that call comes, and may we leave a legacy as enduring as his. To you, our father, Nana Ajiman Permpeh I, we say rest in glory, your legacy lives on. To you, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, we say, long live the king. Agree with me, therefore, as we receive, to close us, the Archbishop Emeritus of the Anglican Church, Most Reverend Professor Daniel Yinka Safo.
Please, those of you who can stand, let's stand. Those who can stand, let's stand. Let us unite our hearts in prayer. Almighty and ever-living God, Creator of the nations of the world, we give you all the glory that you created Asantehene. We thank you for the solid history you've given to us as a people. We thank you for the heritage you have given to us and to the nation Ghana, which we share with the world all over. Thank you for being with us at the beginning of this program, and you have brought us to a safely end. Commit all ourselves into your care as we leave this place. We know we can't leave your presence. Go along with us wherever you brought us from. These and many other blessings we ask for ourselves through the might of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. The Lord be with you. Depart in peace. And to God's gracious mercy and protection do we commit you all. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Now the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be amongst you and remain with you and all your loved ones, here and elsewhere, this day and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Please, you can sit now.
Humbly, I invite Otumfuo, in the company of the Princess Consorts, Your Excellencies, the President and the First Lady of Seychelles, please proceed for the first photo. We shall all remain seated. The first photo is with Otumfuo, Royal Highness Lady Julia, and their Excellencies, the President and the First Lady of Seychelles alone. For the second photo, I shall invite His Excellency President John Otumfuo, the Regional Minister, Her Excellency Harriet Thompson, and the Chair of the Planning Committee, and another close report. Everybody please be seated. We leave after Otumfuo has left. Please, everybody be seated. Let me invite our speakers, the UNESCO representative, together with all our speakers. Please join us. And the last photo will be with all the members of the planning committee. The last photo with all the members of the planning committee. Please come on stage. All the members of the planning committee, please come on stage. Members of the planning committee, please come on stage. So let's end. We say many thanks to you, Otumfuo, for graciously coming and attending to say thank you, Your Excellency, for gracing the event for us.
Kenke no amemfa hanye ba ku. Sa na nko. Me kwa. Ni so na wo ha kam. Me chiri.
Boys,
Nana. Some of them were